who's come here today. I'm here as a Brummy. I'm here as a Muslim today. When we have gathered in many protests, in many rallies in this very place, whether it's against the cuts or to stand in solidarity with the disabled or for women's rights or against policies that are taking place in our government's name in foreign wars, which many of us do not support, I stood as a citizen. Today, I stand as a Muslim to say not in our name. Because the realities are, there are individuals, small groups, who wish to hijack our beautiful faith. And that's why it is the responsibility of Muslims to show our rejection and condemnation. That is not being an apologist, that is standing up to our moral duty. And at the same time, I'm conscious that there are extremists on the other side of the spectrum who love, who embrace, who wait and want atrocities like the terrible tragedy in Westminster so that they too can peddle their message of hate. The EDL within a few days has announced that they want to march in Birmingham in April. They were not saying this before this atrocity. So these two sets of extremists feed on one another. And the shame of it is that ordinary Muslims are constantly drawn in, blamed, vilified, demonized and stereotyped. Because also the reality is this: when Jo Cox MP was murdered by a coward in Yorkshire, by a person born and bred in Yorkshire, another 52-year-old man who happened to be called Thomas Mair, nobody asked the question, what's wrong with Yorkshire that it's producing terrorists? When a 52-year-old man, born in Tunbridge Wells, brought up in Kent, happened to spend the last few months in Birmingham, commits a terrible, terrible atrocity, murdering 5 people and injuring many, many others, all of a sudden, it's Birmingham's problem. So I'm here to also say to the media, first and foremost, stop bashing Birmingham and stop bashing Muslims. And I say this in all seriousness. We, the community, have come together to do our duty. Each and every person who's standing here behind me on the stage represents not just one mosque, not just one organization. They represent hundreds. These are people who yesterday in the Friday prayers sent a message not to a few hundred people, but to hundreds and thousands of people in a clear way, saying not in our name as Muslims, who held prayers for the victims of that attacker. So I don't want to hear what are the Muslims doing and that they're not doing enough. That becomes an easy distraction. But I do want to ask the politicians who want to seek popularity when these atrocities happened. Well, I want to ask the media who maybe want to get more hits and more sales of papers when they label Birmingham the jihadist capital. What are you doing to stop extremism? And I would go as far as this, and I say this in a measured way, and I say this in all sincerity. When you give the likes of nobodies like this Khalid Masood, who nobody in Birmingham's heard of, the kind of attention that you've given him, you are encouraging hundreds of others to come forward, because you cannot buy that kind of publicity that ISIS have now got. And you are also giving encouragement and emboldening the likes of the EDL, who are fringe, who are marginal, but want to seek and exploit the grievances. And we see the march of the right in Europe. We see the march of the right in America. And we're fortunate in Britain. We're fortunate that we are still holding together, but we must not take that for granted. The precious pluralism, the precious public space, the diversity, the respect, the live and let live attitude. This is not automatic. This has been hard won by decades of people who've come before us, who built great cities like Birmingham and London and Manchester, and sacrificed and stood against the extremists of their time, who fought in the Second World War against the Nazis, so we could have the freedom to stand here today as we are doing in this city centre. So don't let your greed for your profits and your need for attention distract you from the very serious priorities we have today. You may not remember the name of Zaki Davis. Who has heard of Zaki Davis here? Right? Who's heard the name Lee Rigby here? All of us, right? Zaki Davis in Tesco's decided he wanted to revenge the brutal murder of Lee Rigby by taking a machete into a supermarket and attacking a person called Dr. Bambro, who happened to be a Sikh dentist, because you know extremists, they don't differentiate. He thought he was attacking a Muslim, but it was a Sikh dentist who was attacked with a machete, and he said, this is for Lee Rigby. Because this is what happens. Hate begets hate. And when Thomas More killed Joe Cox, he said Britain first. But he did not speak for Britain. Did he speak for Britain? No. But did we have to have all the churches to say not in our name? Did we have to have all of Yorkshire coming out to say not in our name? We understood that it is not in their name. But we also recognise as Muslims that because that is the fear now, that is the insecurity that people are being made to feel. While some people have agendas, there are many ordinary people who may not know a Muslim in their life, who may not have a Muslim friend or neighbour or colleague, and when they see these things on TV, when they read about things in the paper, they feel a genuine fear and apprehension. And that's why we still feel, despite our distress, despite our frustration, that we will, as British Muslims, as Birmingham Muslims, come out not just today. We have come out previously many times, and we will inshallah still continue to come out and say not in our name. And I thank all the people who have stood with us. We have had many vigils, many interfaith gatherings. Birmingham is a beautiful place. It is the youngest city in Europe. It's the most diverse. My father, for 30 years, worked in the Royal Mail, just a few yards from here. I have grown up in King's Heath. I have lived in Bearwood. I now live in Moseley. My 3 boys have grown up in this city, have studied in this city. This is our place. And we don't want to feel unwelcome, and we don't want others to fear us. So our message today is about standing together, unity and humanity, because what unites us is far, far greater than anything that can divide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma Yaqub.